I'm Will Kiddo from Squirrel, and this is packing a base parachute. We're going to start out by putting the pull-up cords into the closing loops. For this pack job, we're using 2 pull-up cords, 1 in each closing loop. Before you start your pack job, you want to make sure your parachute is hooked up correctly by doing a continuity check. So we're going to put each line between the fingers of one hand. If you have more lines than you have fingers, then use another hand. This allows us to easily see that all lines are routed correctly. You don't have any tangles. No lines are routed over the top or in between each other. Once you have checked one riser group, set it off to the side and then move on to the next. So start with the rears, move to the fronts. Now, if you hooked up your canopy correctly, this should be pretty quick and easy because you've already done it. But it's good to do this before every pack job. That way, you're 100% sure that everything is hooked up correctly. We're going to start by setting the brakes. But we're doing a slider down pack job because it's a little bit different than normal skydiving. So this is how it works. A quick way to remember this is from the point of view of the set loop on the riser. Line, ring, toggle. So run the set loop through the line, then run it through the ring, then run the toggle through the loop. That's line, ring, toggle. Make sure you route the excess brake line towards the inside of the riser. That way it's out of the way as you reach up for the toggles during opening. Once the brakes are set, you're going to add a weight to the pack job so that as we're packing the parachute, we're not dragging the container along the ground. Adding a clamp to the risers helps keep symmetry. Now Matt Blank is going to help us with the main part of the pack job. Start off by grabbing the front riser in one hand and the rear riser and control lines in the other hand. Run up the lines to the bottom of the canopy. Give it a little bit of a swing so you can lay it out on its side, keeping tension all the way until you touch the ground. Once you lay it down, align the A lines in line with the rig. This is going to be your packing lane. So with our A line, the top surface of our canopy, in line with the A lines, we're now flaking the nose, making sure everything's nice and neat, aligned, and amazing. Place a clamp on the top surface to keep things in line, and then tuck the nose under to keep it out of the way. We'll deal with that later. Next, we're going to do the same thing for the B lines. So grab the packing tabs, which are in line with the B lines. Make sure you have all 7. Get them in line nice and neat. Place a clamp. Now we're going to flake the outside 3 cells to the outside of this pack job. Make sure it's nice and square. Everything looks good. Remember, we're just dealing with one side of the parachute right now. Even though we're grabbing all 7 packing tabs, we're going to deal with the other side of the parachute after we finish straightening out this side. Moving on to the C lines. Here are the C line packing tabs. Place a clamp, keep things nice and neat. Find the 3 outside cells. Get your hand inside there, make it nice and neat. Flake it to the outside. We need one more clamp here. So sometimes the packing tabs won't lay nice and neat. That's okay. Make sure you still get all 7 of them. They can try and hide from you, but do the same exact thing. Grab all 7 packing tabs, place a clamp, try and make it as neat as you can. Remember, it's going to be more difficult to fold the D-line section cleanly because of the narrowing taper of the parachute. You may notice that the flake to the outside is not as square, not as rectangular, but try and make it as neat as you can. Now we're going to move to the other side of the parachute, and it's okay to flop the tail onto the side we just cleaned up. We're going to clean that up later. We're going to flake the same way. We've already flaked one side, and everything should be more or less in the same place, but we're just going to clean it up. We're going to flake between the A and B lines, then we're going to flake between the B and C lines, and then flake between the C and D lines on the outside. Now, back to the tail, we're going to split it so that The left side of the tail is on the left side, the right side of the tail is on the right side of the pack job. Get it out of the way. And we're going to start flaking the inside. Remember, we just flaked the outside of the parachute, made it nice and neat. Now we're going to do the same thing, flaking the inside of the parachute between all the attachment points. Now Matt Lodge is going to show us how to clean up the inside. Find and align all the A-line attachment points. Place them on the ground and use your foot to hold them in place. Move up to the B-line attachment points, gather all 4 on each side, and flake between the A's and the B's. Once the material is flaked between the A's and the B's, you can now transfer your foot up to the B-line attachment points. Keep those in place and move your hands up to the C-line attachment points. Gather all 4 on each side, make sure everything's nice and neat, and flake between the B's and the C's. Once those are nice and neat, move up to the D's and repeat. The D-line attachment points in general are the messiest because there's more and more space for them to go where they want. So just take your time, make sure you find all 4 attachment points and make sure everything's nice and neat and flaked. The tail can be a little bit confusing when you're first learning how to pack. What you want to do is align each seam. Some seams look like they have double stitches, some look like they have single stitches, but whenever you see a seam on the tail, it should be aligned with the center of the pack job and the excess material flaked to the outside. The trailing edge seam should be perpendicular to the pack job. Once everything is flaked, all lines are nice and neat towards the center, you can attach the tailgate. So the easiest way to do this is to start back at the riser end of the lines. Grab the control lines and the inside C and D lines. Usually parachutes will have a color coding on the line so you know which ones to grab. But grab these lines and then slowly and carefully run up the lines, making sure not to tangle with any other lines as you get towards the pack job. You'll find the tailgate usually attached to the center C line on the left side. Wrap the tailgate around and attach with a rubber band. In place of a tailgate, you can use a small piece of masking tape. A single wrap of tape around the control lines and center C and D lines should do the trick. Once you have the tailgate attached and everything is flaked, you can remove the top clamp and bring the tail pocket down to the bottom seam of the canopy. Open the tail pocket, being careful not to move the pack job around too much. You're about to drag the container across the grounds, so remove any weight you may be using. Sitting on your pack job while you stow the lines helps keep everything nice and neat. With the tail pocket open, take about a 2.5 inch bite of all the lines and wrap it with the rubber band underneath the tail pocket. In general, it's good to use a large rubber band and do a double wrap around this primary stow. Once you have the bite stowed, tuck it underneath the tail pocket and out of the way. First, route the lines straight up to the center of the tail pocket, then start figure eighting from there. Reach across to the line with your thumb pointed at yourself as you bring each loop up towards the tail pocket. Figure eight the lines towards the mouth of the tail pocket, making them smaller as they progress. With one hand at a time, while keeping the other hand in place, keeping the already looped lines from moving. Make sure loops cascade down towards the mouth of the tail pocket so that loops cannot capture each other. The goal here is to allow the lines to pay out cleanly without looping around each other. Once all the lines are in place, secure the Velcro of the tail pocket, making sure that all lines are captured in the tail pocket with no loose lines routed around through corners. Align the risers evenly spaced apart towards the outside of the finished pack job. We're going to do reduction folds so that the width of the pack job will easily fit inside the closed container. More often than not, the tail pocket is a good size indicator for what will fit inside the container. So try and make the pack job the same width as the tail pocket when you're doing reduction folds. You can do 1 or 2 folds towards the center of the pack job. Now is a good time to S-fold the nose under the pack job and capture it with the clamp. Clamps can be handy here to keep things in place while you're moving the pack job around. Gently lift on the pack job. Bring the bottom of the pack job down to the bottom of the container, so the tail pocket is resting against that bottom flap. So make sure the risers are laying flat with the toggles facing either inside or outside based on your preference, and there are no kinks in either the risers or the container, so everything is laying flat, nice and smooth. And then create a single fold exposing the nose. Now we're going to dress the nose. If your container has a through loop with a top closing loop attached to the bottom of the container, you may need to spread the ears of the pack job so that it allows the closing loop to have a clean route up towards the grommets. Make your final fold. Make sure the bridle is routed up through the center of the pack job, and begin closing the container, not catching any edges of material, which may cause the pack job to rotate during extraction. Make sure to hold the parachute in place with your hands as you're closing the flaps, so that the action of you closing the container doesn't disturb your pack job. Make sure you read the owner's manual of your container so you orient the pins the way they should be. In this rig, the pin should be in a frowny face position with the pin pointed to the right, and you're looking right side up at the container. Make sure you use the correct pin on the bridle.
For the top pin, we use the pin closest to the canopy end of the bridle.
Make sure you route the bridle cleanly out of the container without wrapping around anything that can induce an off-heading.
Now for the bottom pin, we use the second pin, or the pin closest to the pilot chute end of the bridle. It is okay if things don't look perfect as you're closing the container. Once you're done, you're going to want to tidy things up by doing a little bit of massaging and adjustments to make things look good.
The last part of the pack job is packing the pilot chute. Squeeze the mesh into a long tube, fold it in half, and then S-fold the bridle on top of the mesh. It's good to keep the pilot chute loosely wrapped when you're packing it. The tighter you make it, the longer it's going to take to inflate when it's time to pull. With a 42-inch pilot chute, usually there's no handle, so you create a bulbous handle out of the bulk of the pilot chute at the apex of the pilot chute. Try to make it into a torpedo shape so it easily slides into the BOC. Make sure to account for all of your tools when your pack job is finished. If one of them is missing, most likely it's inside your pack job.